if you're going to start, and this is why I named this show A Low View of Scripture, is because if you're going to start throwing out scripture, any scripture, I mean, Michael Rood did this back in the day, right? He wanted to get rid of John 6:4. And he says, oh, well, John 6:4 isn't in any of the early manuscripts. That's not true. It's in every single manuscript all the way up until the 13th century. And so basically,
he didn't know how to read
he didn't know how to read
critical apparatus. Because there's a whole section missing. It doesn't mean that.
Yeah. And basically, see, people who know how to do research see this and just say, no, this is not right. And so what people without any ability to research the actual text do is they come to it and they want to be critical of it. They say, oh, well, Paul speaks against the Torah because they can't figure it out in their own mind. And so they just decide to start throwing out books, but they do it on the pretense of reading a English Bible. And if you're going to start making large faith decisions that erode the foundation of our faith, learn some languages first. Go to school and figure out how to do some research.
Yeah. Do the hard work.
Yeah.
Show yourself approved. And you know what? That's going to cost you your life. You got to say no to a bazillion other things. And it's a path for the rest of our life, and boy, yeah.
The other thing is that these people obviously don't know how to write, and they don't know how to make videos, and they don't know how to make blogs because these sites are just awful. There's just so many, and that's fine. You don't need to have a flashy site or anything like that, but at least put together a coherent argument. I mean, these people, it's really very sad. It's really very sad.
Well, plus it's a position of tearing down.
Right.
The whole trajectory is that of tearing down. And boy, ooh.
I mean, for me, here's the thing is that I constantly go back to, there was an aha moment with me. Okay. Aha. Growing up, my father and the congregation that he was a co-pastor or is a co-pastor at, every year they would get to Passover and they would sit down and they would argue. They'd usually take 1 to 2 weeks and argue the Passion chronology. When I say the Passion chronology, what they were trying to do is they were trying to make John, the book of John, line up with the 3 synoptic gospels on the timeline. And there was arguments every year. And
because of the big scholarly academic secular version that says, no, point blank, they're separate.
Right.
John has a different chronology. So you have people in the church now that have to actually learn to understand this and talk about it intelligently because they've got people that have read an article in Newsweek or, coming to them. And that's probably one of the fronts that was confronting them.
So basically, when I was confronted with this in my early 20s, because I said, I don't understand the argument, my dad said, all right, well, let's sit down and look at the arguments. And we did. He said, look, John says this, the synoptics say this. Now, in my mind at the time, and I wasn't walking with the Lord, I thought, well, there you have it. The Bible has a contradiction in it. It's obvious. John says that it's on this day, that he dies on the 14th. And the synoptics say he dies on the 15th. What other evidence do you need? There it is. It's plain as day, right? And not only that, but it's been 2,000 years and scholars still can't get it right. So obvious, scholars have no good answer for this. Scholars will tell you, well, I just accept the Johannine chronology or I accept the synoptic gospel chronology. I'm getting somewhere with this, by the way. Okay. My father does a ton of research. My father works. And finally, my dad comes up with this chronology and he publishes this chronology and it lines all of them up. Now, this was pretty revolutionary, but I thought maybe this is just my dad. Well, then Brant Petrie comes out with the same chronology, totally separate from my father. Never read my father's work or anything. And now all of these scholars are jumping on board and saying, yeah, this actually works it out. Okay, now think about this. 2,000 years. For 2,000 years, people thought that John disagreed with the synoptic gospels and vice versa. It took 2,000 years for people to figure out the chronology, so that the four
Well,
gospels.
to be fair, we don't know what people thought at different times.
Fair
if
enough.
they didn't,
Fair
if they
enough.
didn't
But
write, yeah.
ultimately, we don't have any large works saying this is obviously how, it wasn't widely known, at least, right? And so now, all of a sudden, 2,000 years later, we have a consensus that's starting to form within the scholarly world, saying, "Look, these actually can line up just perfect." And the epiphany that I had was, if I come to the scriptures and I see something that seems contradictory, there are two things I know. Number one, God doesn't contradict himself, and so the scripture is not wrong. Whatever the scripture says, that's right. In other words, I rest my faith and I rest my life on the 66-book canon. That is correct. And the second thing is that although it may seem to contradict itself, that just means that it's a mystery to me, something that I haven't figured out or something that I can't figure out, one of the two. Thank you so much for watching this video. Tell us your thoughts on this subject by leaving a comment in the comment section. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and enable those notifications. And we'll see you in the next video.